Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it's the voice of Chi-Town, the reddest beard in the high desert, your host of the MOA broadcast, Sam Wilson. All right, folks, we got a fantastic show lined up for you today. Again, this is one of our midweek shows. We're going to be a little briefer. We're trying to keep these to around 20 to 30 minutes or so, kind of like a daily news update and survival tip or something like that. As opposed to our full 1 hour Make It Out Alive, a broadcast that we do over the weekend. This should be something kind of, tide you over. And one thing I have learned in the last couple of months and years of producing content, whether it's for the radio or for Spotify, whatever, wherever you're getting it, YouTube, it is that we have become a society that instead of like gathering around to watch shows at certain times, programming, we have now become a society that consumes content. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. It just means that the way this content is consumed and provided to people is different than it used to be. People don't just, like I remember getting gathering around to watch Cheers on Thursday evening or Thursday night years ago. That was something you look forward to the whole week, and you made it and you were there, you had your plate of food and you used the restroom and everything was all said and done. Now, And you couldn't watch Cheers really any other time unless you had taped it with your VCR. But now we can get content all the time from our phones, computers, tablets, yada, yada, yada. Listen to it while driving, working, whatever. So anyway, that's the point of this little exercise here, is to produce a little more content that, people might like to enjoy and listen to, because people become fans of a certain person. I'm certainly no celebrity or anything by any means on any level, but I do have a certain number of people that enjoy my content and they like to hear more. Even if it's just playing in the background while they're mowing the lawn or whatever else. So that's kind of the point. Let's go ahead and jump into our show highlights, though. For episode 32 of the MOA broadcast, Criminals Beware, the Grappler is on the prowl. If you don't know what the Grappler is, we're going to get into that very briefly. We don't have time to do a whole story on it today, but we'll do it at another time. Interesting tool. California professor involved in a tear gas attack on, you guessed it, folks, ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They can't get enough ICE out there in California, it would seem. Another influencer meets a violent end. We talked about this the other day. We'll get into it a little bit more deeply today and go from there. And mini urban survival kits. This is something I get requested on a regular basis, to get into more kits and more of the survival talk and everything. I always thought that would get kind of old and people would get bored of talking about the same old things, but people love to talk about kits. So we'll get into that briefly today and expand upon it maybe again in the larger MOA broadcast on the weekend. And finally, folks, a naked man drinks from the toilet before a nasty brawl with the police. That's right. You're going to get it all here today on the MOA broadcast with Sam Wilson. And yes, for those of you that have been asking, we have Cobra, the black shop cat, out here with us on a regular basis. I don't have him all the time. He's out here tonight. If you want to say hello, then I will hold him up here and we'll see if he loves to purr. When you pick him up, he instantly goes into like relaxed purring mode. So it's not difficult to get an extended, purring session from him. So let's see if he wants to. Hang on. There we go. Say hello, Cobra. All right, that's good. I'm gonna put him on. He's on his little, his tactical cat vest. And he actually, this is bizarre for me, because every other cat that I've dealt, and I'm not saying that he's so unique, but every cat that I've dealt with in the past, they can't stand having harnesses and collars and stuff on. When I put his harness on, or this tactical vest on him that has a leash, he immediately seemed to like this thing. He'll walk around the house, just strut around in it like he's 10 foot tall. So I guess he likes it, but that allows me to keep him safely out here in the knife shop where we record these episodes. It's nice. There's more room out here than in the sound booth and so forth. So anyway, we have Cobra with us today. Let's get into if you are headed to work right now. I hope you're enjoying a delicious cup of coffee. I myself today am going with Aeropress, and I'm using a French roast coffee. I cannot drink coffee unless it's extremely stout. Like the spoon needs to stand straight up in this cup of coffee for me to get into it and enjoy it. So we're doing Aeropress today with a scoop of what in the world is the name of that butter I always get? I can't think of it, but it's the Irish grass-fed butter. You put about a tablespoon or a teaspoon, whatever you like, of that into your coffee, and man, it is delicious. It takes the edge off. Is one of the things I like about it. It doesn't, seem, because coffee is fairly acidic. And first thing in the morning, which is when a lot of people are going to be listening to this, and when I'm cutting it, recording it, and your stomach is empty, and you pour a cup of hot acid down your throat into your gullet, and that can be a little offensive to your stomach and your bowels. But a little bit of the grass-fed butter seems to take the edge off of that, and actually enhances the flavor, in my opinion. Probably about 75% of the time, I'll do the butter and the coffee. Usually the first cup and the second cup of the day. From that point on, I'll usually just drink it black and scalding hot. But great way to get the day started. And if you haven't tried it, just give it a try. It may sound different, but think about it, guys. Excuse me. Butter is a dairy product, right? It's not that much different than your other dairy products that people add to your coffee, and it is far superior to these commercially concocted coffee creamers that have look at the chemicals list on those things. It is horrible. There's all kinds of junk they put in there, including tons of sugar. Now, I'm not opposed to adding, I love raw sugar in the raw, turbinado, those types of sugars added occasionally to my coffee. But typically, I like it blacker with the butter. So anyway, that's what we got going on here. Now, we were talking about the Grappler. Okay, if you haven't seen this, we're not going to do a full story on it today, but just wanted to bring it up. I saw a bunch of video clips on this thing on social media online. This is some sort of device that cops are now using. If you recall, they've used things like stop sticks and all these other kind of things before in the past, but and then the pitting maneuver. Those can be hit or miss, and they typically tend to cause a lot of carnage, and collateral damage, secondary, tertiary damage that you don't really want, like sending the car out of control, can roll, hurt other people or bystanders, kill or injure the person inside. It's not just the legality of it all, and the liability. It's just, it's carnage that you don't really want. If you can contain it, so much the better. And the stop sticks, they're only as good as the officer deploying them. And I'm not saying either of those methods are not good or very effective or should be abandoned. But this Grappler is interesting. I was reading up on it briefly. Like I said, I don't have a ton of info right now, but I think it was invented by a guy in Arizona or something. And that's where I saw the first video. And the Las Vegas PD just made the news a couple of days ago or in the last 36 hours because they employed it successfully to stop a high-speed chase. And basically, the best way I can describe this is it looks like two fold-out forks, or bars that fold out of the front of the cop car, and it had what looks like multiple tie-down straps on it, but I think it's just a series of tie-down straps. And basically, they move forward and they slide it, under the rear wheel of the vehicle they're chasing, and it just tangles it up. And so basically, it looks like a bunch of heavy-duty nylon straps tangle up the drive wheel or whatever, any wheel of the vehicle that it impacts, and that just basically disables the vehicle. It's pretty dramatic. When you see it deployed, they just drive right up, and it's of course there's skill and chance involved and so forth, but it just stops the vehicle, man. Because once that nylon strap or whatever it's made of gets wound up around the rear wheel of the vehicle, it just can't go any further. So I don't know what the limitations are, if it works as well on front-wheel drive vehicles or whatever else, but pretty dramatic, pretty cool footage. If you haven't seen it, check it out. If you look up Las Vegas PD and Grappler on YouTube or whatever social media you use, you should be able to find the footage of that. I thought it was pretty cool. And one last question. So I got an email about this. The concept behind these midweek shows that we're doing here. So far, we've received very positive feedback about these smaller news-oriented segments, and we're going to try and continue to include a little survival segment or preparedness segment as well. And for now, as long as I can keep it manageable, I'm going to try and produce these 2 to 3 times a week, maybe like on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday type thing. So, you got a little bite-sized chunk of something to listen to of content from someone that you know or are interested in or whatever. And if you don't like it and you don't care about Sam Wilson and his MOA broadcast, then that's entirely up to you and do what you want to do too. But for those that do enjoy it, that's the idea. So let's jump into our first news story of the day. We go to the great state of California. Let me get a sip here, folks. Okay. California state professor hit with felony charges for allegedly hurling tear gas canisters at ICE agents. The story comes to us from the New York Post. Now, if you recall, the other day we had that guy in, I think it was LA, so California as well, where the lady is getting arrested by ICE to be deported, and he illegally tows the ICE vehicle away, which he is now incarcerated or he's arrested. I don't know if he's made bail yet or not. He's facing serious legal problems, most likely for some time. So you would think people would learn to leave it alone if it's not your business. Whether you agree with it ideologically or not, there are laws against interfering with law enforcement procedures. Okay, you can't be doing that legally. So what happened? A California college professor has been indicted on felony charges for allegedly hurling federal agents' own tear gas canisters back at them during a raid on a pot farm this summer, the Department of Justice announced. Can you imagine reading that headline to someone who lived here in the States 30 or 40 years ago or 50 years ago? They would not know what to make. A college professor indicted for felony charges of throwing tear gas canister back at ICE agents while a raid on a pot farm in California. What a bizarre turn the U.S. is taking, or the world in general. Anyway, we go back to our story. Jonathan Anthony Caravello, a 37-year-old math and philosophy professor at California State University, Channel Islands, was indicted Wednesday for assaulting a federal officer when hundreds of protesters clashed with immigration agents at the Camarillo farm this summer when they employed tear gas to disperse the crowd. Caravello allegedly picked up a canister and chucked it back at the officers. Prosecutors allege he's now facing up to 20 years in prison if convicted. So what happened is the Homeland Security did this raid and Border Patrol did this raid on 300 allegedly illegal workers at near the Glass House Farms location. They were blocked in from leaving, and so things escalated to rocks being thrown at the government vehicles and so forth, and so the officers deployed tear gas. They threw a tear gas canister, and allegedly Caravello threw the tear gas canister back, and it seems, according to the article, allegedly struck an officer with it. He left the protest, changed his clothes, and then came back 2 hours later. He was identified by agents as the canister thrower who took him into custody, during which he allegedly resisted arrest. I've seen pictures of this guy. He looks like your typical California college professor. He didn't put up much of a fight, I'm guessing, folks. That's my guess. I don't know. Didn't see the video, but he looks. You can do a search. Anyway. He was initially charged with felony assault, but the charges were kicked down to a misdemeanor, and he pled guilty on August 25th, telling them that anything, he said, this is his quote according to the Ventura County Star, anything and everything I do at protest is to protect people. I would never intentionally harm anyone. I guess that means he didn't throw the tear gas canister at the ICE agent, even though he pled guilty, it would appear. Okay, now here's the interesting part. A grand jury reviewed his case. So they initially kicked it down from felony to misdemeanor charge, but a grand jury reviewed the case and they indicted Caravello on a felony count of assaulting a federal agent. So I guess we'll see how it goes. Best of luck, Mr. Caravello. Okay, we go to, now if you recall the other day, we were talking about these TikTok influencers and influencers of all kinds on social media. There has got to be something there is something going on in that industry. I don't know what it is, and I'm not casting aspersions. I genuinely don't know what's happening. But we see some of the most bizarre stories of these influencers and the things that they get themselves into. And we'll jump right in here, and we'll keep this one kind of brief. Sad story, but TikTok influencer found slain with husband and 2 young children in Mexico, according to USA Today. TikTok content creator Esmeralda Ferrer Garibay, her husband, and their 2 young children, a boy and a girl, were found slain on Friday, August 22nd, in the San Andres neighborhood of Guadalajara, the Jalisco Attorney General's office said in a news release. She goes by Esmeralda FG on TikTok. She's 32 years old. According to prosecutors, her husband is 36, her son 13, and the daughter 6. The family lived in Mexico, the Mexican state of Michoacan, where the influencer's husband, Licea Garabay, sold cars and allegedly farmed tomatoes. Now, the interesting thing is, I'm not going to read the whole article. There are allegedly, she had made some comments in either song lyrics or whatever about having ties to drug-related things or whatever else. And obviously, the first thing that's going to pop into your mind when you hear about people that were executed, their bodies were found abandoned in a mechanic shop, wrapped in plastic inside of a late model truck. Okay? Now, what's the first word that's going to pop into your mind when you hear 4 people executed and wrapped in plastic and found inside of a vehicle? For most people, that word's going to be cartel, and that's what's swirling. There were allegedly rumors that her husband had ties to the drug trade and who knows what else. So I don't know. And this is the thing I don't quite get about this whole influencer thing, what they really do. I know obviously there's got to be a motivation beyond just the ego side of it. Some people, I'm sure, just want to be famous, which is kind of a sickness in America now. I want to be famous. I don't want to be, do a certain thing. I want to be a singer, an actor, whatever. I just want to be famous. Whatever that is, make me famous. Now, I'm not saying that's her. I'm just saying that's the thing that with these influencers I don't get. Now, according to her TikTok profile, she had almost 50,000 followers, which that isn't that much. There are influencers that have hundreds of thousands and millions of followers. I mean, 50,000 is enough to catch somebody's attention maybe, but that's not like a tremendous following. And I guess according to the article, she posted lifestyle videos showing off her travels, her family, and designer items. So I don't know. Horrible story, especially for the children involved. That they clearly, I mean, at 13 and what was it, 6 years old, yeah, that's a real shame. So anyway, just a cautionary tale. Man, oh man. Okay, now, we want to discuss a survival topic, as that's the core of the MOA broadcast, the show here. And so we've received positive feedback so far on these daily news updates and stuff, but we wanted to make sure we keep a little meat on the bones here. And we're going to get into 2 topics briefly here. Again, we're going to try and keep the episodes between 20 and 30 minutes. And the 2 topics we're going to jump into today are modern prepping and then a daily survival kit for both urban and wilderness environments or applications. Okay, now, when we use the word prepping, this word has gone through a bit of an evolution over the years. It's changed. And, used to when you heard somebody was a prepper, or they used to call them a doomsday prepper, or, something like that, it conjured up images, we've discussed this before, of people with bunkers and stockpiles of ammunition and, bomb shelters and all this stuff, anarchists and everything else. And that really is no longer what the core or maybe what the growing part of the prepper movement is. And I don't know if I would consider myself a prepper. I guess so in a very loose definition of their application of that term. But really what I try and encourage people to do is not just to be a quote unquote prepper, but to be prepared. And this, in my mind, is particularly incumbent upon you if you have a family and or especially if you are the head of your household. Whether you're male or female, doesn't matter. If you're the one that's in charge of your group or your family, it is incumbent upon you to do at least something to make sure your family is prepared, or your group, whatever that may be, your family unit, they have all these different terms today, but whatever it is, your group of people, your posse, your clan, whatever, is prepared in the event of an emergency. This doesn't require a bomb shelter. It doesn't require, an underground bunker or tens of thousands of dollars worth of gear and stuff. You can make, take little steps each day. We talked about that before. Each time you go shopping, if you, add an extra bag of rice or 2, get an extra canned good, get yourself, a little bit more fuel, whatever it may wind up being. The bottom line is you have a focus on being prepared, not just being a prepper and whatever that stereotypical definition may be or may have been in the past, but you are working to be prepared in the future. And for the life of me, I can't see why that would be a bad thing for anyone. And I realize there are stigmas at times for, or against or around people that, stockpile firearms and ammunition and all this stuff. whatever. What you do is your business. I've mentioned before, I don't get heavy into the firearms discussions on here. There's so many places that do it so much better and cover it much more in depth. And frankly, for me, over the years, firearms and even knives. I mean, I'm a knife maker by trade. That's how I make my living primarily. And guns and knives, they're tools to me. I don't really sit there and fantasize about knives or guns or whatever else. I use them whenever I need them. They're a tool. If something needs to be cut or sliced or maybe scraped or whatever it is, I use a knife. And then I put it back, and then I don't really think about it unless I'm actively thinking about designing a new knife or trying to improve on something or whatever. And none of that is meant as a criticism or an indictment of anyone else. I'm just saying, if you want really in-depth information on like the gun side of things, there's lots of places you can find that. We're here focused on really practical, the more pragmatic steps that anyone can take, at any time when you're at Walmart, when you're getting stuff from Amazon, when you're at the, whatever local grocery store or box store. So, the thing to remember is in 2025 now, prepping isn't fringe anymore. It is very, very practical. The mainstream trend that surrounds prepping and that's driving it has shifted towards low stress, everyday type readiness. Instead of like always being on edge and thinking the government is coming for you. And I'm not saying that it isn't. But anyway, have you guys seen what's going on in the UK? I'll keep this brief, but there's some comedian. I didn't get a chance to read the whole article. This just happened in the last couple of days. From my understanding, what I read leading up to this, police in the UK are not generally, or in London or whatever, Britain, wherever, where exactly, I don't know where, it happened at Heathrow Airport. They're not always armed. Some comedian whose job is to say outlandish things and make people laugh, made some jokes on X or made some posts on X. He was greeted by 5 armed policemen. 5 for a comedian. You ever seen a comedian? They're usually nerdy little guys, and this guy looked like he was too. The cops don't even have guns a lot of times patrolling the streets. And they had 5 armed cops to greet this guy when he touched down coming from Arizona back into the UK at Heathrow Airport. And they arrested him. He had a medical emergency. He wound up going to the hospital, and then I guess he was released on bail. And one of his conditions on bail, all of this was for a post on X or Twitter. One of his conditions for getting bail was that he couldn't post on X. I don't know for how long, I guess, until they have his trial or whatever happens. So, that kind of stuff, guys, that's crazy. That if you talk about your government coming to get you. But anyway, that was a side quest there. We'll get back to it. But the real point we're getting at here, as far as prepping, call it whatever you want, being practical, being pragmatic, whatever. This is just everyday readiness, keeping basic gear handy and well maintained and working. Things like a few extra meals or a few gallons of water and knowing what to do in a blackout or a storm or a snowstorm, getting buried in ice storm. We don't have ice storms out here where I'm at in the hills of Oregon. But when I used to live in Missouri, we had ice storms all the time. Power would go down frequently throughout the winter, and you had to be prepared for all this stuff. So are you prepared for situations like that? If not, do something about it. You don't have to become an expert overnight. But that's the thing, incrementally starting things like, having a flashlight and batteries, a backup phone charger, shelf-stable food or meals, a weather radio, some type of solar charger for this stuff. Being able to keep your gear going and having light, heat, food, and water is a big start to making sure that you have at least something done. Because how are you going to feel if there is an emergency and you didn't do anything to prepare, and your family or your group or whatever we're calling it these days looks to you and wonders, why don't I have food in front of me? Why don't I have water? Why is there no electricity? So do something about it. It's not all doom and gloom. Now you have the chance. Little steps each day can make a big difference in all this stuff. So there we go. That was my little expose, if you will, extemporizing on the necessities of pragmatic preparation. Let's go ahead and jump into the urban survival kits for a match safe. Now, if you don't know what a match safe is, if you're under 30 or 40, you may not have ever heard of a match safe before. This is a product that has been around for a very, very long time. I do make and sell a version of this product. Guys, you don't have to buy my version. You can go on Amazon, although my product, Gear Convoy Match Safe, is on Amazon. You can get it at gearconvoy.com, eBay, all over the place. You can get any kind of small container, metal, plastic, whatever, and have yourself some of the core necessities right there with you, and keep this like in your backpack. I have one that I have set up for my area, okay, where I live. Basically the idea is it's a small waterproof container. A match safe like the one I sell is about 4 inches in length, and it's about the size of a roll of dimes, basically. Only it's very lightweight because it's hollow and it's aluminum. It's waterproof, and you can put in a few things that are going to be effective for survival or preparedness in your what they call area of operations where you're going to be. What you may put in there will be very different if you're going to be riding the subway in New York, or if you're going to be out here walking around the woods in the hills of Oregon where I'm at. But the bottom line is you're doing something to prepare yourself. When I lived in cities, I also carried, obviously I live out in the middle of nowhere now, but when I lived in cities, I had mine geared towards that. One of the number one things was a small compass, because a lot of big cities are set up in a good grid style, and you can navigate by just knowing which way is north, south, east, and west, by going up and down the streets and so forth, and get around that way. Obviously, cell phones and GPS and stuff have kind of, replaced some of that, but you should always have a backup. What if you drop your phone? There's a lot of things that could happen. So let's go ahead. We've got a list of a few things that you would want to include here. Your priorities are going to be navigation, light, fire. Even in an urban area, fire can be useful for warmth. If there is these aren't for when things are going well. These kits are if things go off the rails, if there is truly an emergency. There have been multiple major earthquakes in the last couple of weeks around the world. That's an emergency. All of a sudden, electricity, power, heat, light, these are things that are disrupted in these cities. So having yourself a small backup plan is always a good idea. Okay, these things weigh a couple of ounces, if that. Let's see, fire, basic first aid and or signaling. And then things like what they would call urban problem solving, opening a package, scraping, cutting. Some people put like these little pry bars and things inside of theirs, these mini pry bars. I have never really found those appealing to me or effective for what I do. But the bottom line is cater it to what works for you. Use what's going to be beneficial for you in your situation. Okay, let's see. There are other things. A list, a micro ferro rod, mini ferro rod, or a nano sparker. Those are all different terms for a mini ferro rod. It's a little small rod about the size of about the size of a chopstick in diameter, and you can cut it to whatever size you want or buy them in smaller sizes. That will help you to start fires. Things like quick tender tabs or the Vaseline soaked cotton balls. I don't know, the water purification tab that's on the list here would be that critical, but you never know. I actually carry a small water filter in my backpack that goes around with me. So that's the way I address that particular issue. But you do what works for you, a small folding razor blade or a scalpel blade. Now, I sell some of these things on my website on gearconvoy.com. I don't care if you buy them there. Get them from Amazon, Walmart, wherever. For 10 or 15, maybe $20, you can get all of this stuff. And be prepared. If you want to spend more, that's great. Come to Gear Convoy. We got excellent U.S.-made gear. If not, go anywhere. Just do something, because the minute you start taking these steps to prepare yourself, one of the first things that hits people when they start digging into this, they realize how unprepared and helpless they really are in a lot of cases. That usually hits them in one of two different times. Either when they start prepping and preparing, or B, when they're actually thrust into an actual emergency situation, they realize they were woefully unprepared. You don't want to be that person. This is very easy and relatively economical to do. This isn't like a $500 or even a $200 or a $100 kit or purchase. So anyway, there you go. Keep that in mind. The list goes on and on. I always recommend a small miniature flashlight. I do sell those on the website, but you can get there a ton of them on all kinds of websites. Get it wherever you want. But a small light, especially when the lights go out, believe me, especially if your cell phone is no longer functional, is going to be very, very important. Because if you can't see, things get scary really, really quickly. Okay, that's going to end our preparedness segment. Let's jump back in here. Hang on one folks sec. All right, let's go to our concluding story. All right, folks, here. We go to Clearfield County, Pennsylvania. The headline reads, "Naked Clearfield County man accused of attacking troopers during drug-fueled fight." Authorities in Clearfield County say a Morrisdale man is jailed after he allegedly attacked and injured 2 state troopers last week in what was described as a drug-fueled brawl with police during a domestic violence call. Police say they were called to a home in Graham Township on Wednesday morning after 36-year-old Keaton Gaines allegedly showed up naked and under the influence of drugs. Folks, do not do drugs. I have hundreds of these stories, hundreds of them in front of me and on my files here. Do not do drugs. According to the affidavit, troopers say a female resident called 911 after Gaines allegedly told her it was time to meet the Lord, and then began punching her in the head. My God. Jeez. Investigators say that during the 911 call, Gaines reportedly locked himself in a bathroom with 2 children and the woman's husband. Police say Gaines allegedly began praying loudly and quote-unquote drinking toilet water. So imagine you're in your house and this guy bursts in buck naked and he starts saying it's time to meet the Lord. And then he drags himself along with your husband and your kids into a bathroom and starts drinking out of the toilet while praying. Oh, God. Troopers say when they arrived at the home, they attempted to remove Gaines from the residence, at which time he attempted to, quote, fight them. This quote is for the aggressor, allegedly. No, you're the cops. Now, this is a fight. Gaines reportedly screamed at troopers. The troopers attempted to tase Gaines multiple times, but were unable to subdue him with the tasers. They then say Gaines allegedly repeatedly punched and kicked the troopers, causing one to suffer broken ribs and a bruised wrist, while the other suffered a possible broken bone in his hand. This is one naked dude against 2 troopers with tasers, pepper spray, probably batons, and firearms. Authorities note that Gaines was eventually sedated. He was given some sort of sedative to calm him down, allegedly, and was transported to Mount Nittany Medical Center for evaluation. Authorities note, according to online court records, he was arraigned last week on a variety of charges. I'm sure a variety of charges headlined by aggravated assault, assault of law enforcement, and resisting arrest. Folks, when the guy starts drinking toilet water and saying it's time to meet the Lord, you know you're in trouble. All right, folks, that's going to do it. Have a great week. It's Friday. Get out there. Have a great day. Work hard. Stay safe. And remember, don't wait to prepare for an emergency. If you wait, it may be too late. If you don't make it out alive, you don't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.